Russia's artillery losses during 2025 have already surpassed the number of unit losses seen in 2024. When Russia rolled into Ukraine, it had a plan. Armor combined with artillery would lead to the collapse of the Ukrainian resistance within days. All Russia had to do was keep the tanks rolling and the shells flying. Nearly 4 years into the war, we can see that the initial invasion didn't go according to the Russian plan.
September 22, 2025, Eastern Ukraine, 6:47 a.m. A Ukrainian drone operator sits in a hidden command post, eyes locked on his screen. Below him, through the drone's camera, a massive Russian artillery convoy crawls along a dirt road. Dozens of self-propelled guns, ammunition trucks, command vehicles, all moving together in a single line. The operator's hand hovers over the radio. One word from him, and Ukrainian artillery batteries positioned kilometers away will unleash hell. But not yet, not yet. He's waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for Russia to make one final mistake. And when that moment comes, $81 million worth of Russian artillery will disappear in less than an hour. This is the story of how Ukraine turned Russia's artillery advantage into its greatest weakness. Russia came into this war with one massive advantage: artillery, lots of it. The Russian military had over 18,000 artillery systems when they invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Self-propelled howitzers, towed artillery, multiple rocket launchers, this was their main weapon. Their strategy was simple: flatten everything with artillery, then send in the troops. For months it worked. Russian artillery fired tens of thousands of shells every single day. Ukrainian positions were pounded into dust. Towns were reduced to rubble. Ukraine was being beaten by sheer firepower. But then something changed. Ukraine started destroying Russian artillery faster than Russia could replace it. By mid-2025, the numbers became shocking. In July alone, Ukraine destroyed 1,520 Russian artillery systems. In August, another 1,517. In September, 1,219 more guns went silent forever. How does a smaller army destroy the artillery of a much larger force? The answer isn't just about having good weapons. It's about patience, intelligence, and understanding exactly when your enemy is most vulnerable. And Russia's artillery was most vulnerable when it moved. Artillery is powerful when it's set up and ready to fire. But moving artillery is a nightmare. You need to pack everything. Disconnect the guns, load the ammunition, get the vehicles in a convoy, drive down roads where everyone can see you. For those few hours, you're completely exposed. Ukrainian intelligence knew this, and they started watching. Everywhere Russian artillery moved, Ukrainian drones were watching, small quadcopters flying high above the roads. Watching, waiting, sending coordinates back to Ukrainian command. The Ukrainians weren't just randomly attacking, they were hunting. They tracked Russian artillery units for days. They learned the routes. They figured out when Russians moved their guns and why. They discovered that Russian forces liked to move artillery at dawn, thinking the low light would protect them. It didn't. Ukrainian reconnaissance teams would spot a Russian artillery unit preparing to relocate. They'd watch the Russians pack up their equipment, watch them form a convoy, watch them start driving. And then they'd wait for the convoy to reach the kill zone. September 22, 2025. That was the day everything came together. 81 Russian artillery systems destroyed. In a single day, the highest single-day artillery loss of the entire war. What happened? Russia had decided to reposition a huge amount of artillery all at once. Multiple battalions moving together, probably trying to concentrate firepower for a big push. Ukrainian drones spotted the movement immediately. The convoys were tracked as they left their positions. Ukrainian artillery batteries were given coordinates. HIMARS rocket systems were put on standby. Everything was ready. Then the Russians made their fatal mistake. They used predictable routes. The same roads they'd used before. Roads that Ukrainian forces had already pre-targeted with artillery. When the order came, Ukrainian gunners didn't hesitate. Artillery shells rained down on the convoys. HIMARS rockets screamed through the air. Drones dropped precision munitions on command vehicles. The Russian convoys were trapped. Vehicles at the front were hit first, blocking the road. Vehicles at the back couldn't turn around in time. In the middle, ammunition trucks started exploding, creating massive secondary blasts that destroyed everything nearby. Within minutes, dozens of Russian artillery pieces were burning wrecks. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. But September 22nd was just one day. Ukraine had been doing this for months, and the total destruction was staggering. From January to October 2025, Ukraine destroyed 10,373 Russian artillery systems. Think about that number. That's equivalent to 144 complete artillery brigades. Gone, wiped out. The cost, over $8 billion worth of equipment destroyed. Russian Tu-S-19 MSTA self-propelled howitzers worth about $2.5 million each. Russian Tu-S-3 Akatsiya artillery systems, hundreds of them, Russian multiple rocket launchers, ammunition carriers, fire control vehicles, all of it destroyed. And Ukraine kept the pressure on. March 2025 became another nightmare month for Russia. In that month alone, 1,644 Russian artillery pieces were destroyed, the highest monthly total ever. On March 27th, Ukrainian forces destroyed 122 artillery systems in just 24 hours. By November 2025, Russia had lost over 13,000 artillery systems just in that year alone, more than all of 2025. The destruction was accelerating. How did Ukraine do this? 3 weapons made the difference. First, drones. Ukraine used thousands of small commercial drones modified to carry explosives. These FPV drones cost a few $100s each but could destroy million-dollar artillery pieces. Ukrainian drone operators became hunters, flying their drones directly into Russian guns or ammunition stores. Second, HIMARS. The American-supplied high-mobility artillery rocket system could hit targets up to 80 kilometers away with incredible precision. When Ukrainian intelligence spotted a Russian artillery position, HIMARS could strike it within minutes. Third, counter-battery radar. Ukraine had systems that could detect where Russian artillery fire was coming from, calculate the exact position, and send coordinates to Ukrainian guns. Russian artillery would fire, and within minutes, Ukrainian shells would land on top of them. But the real weapon was intelligence. Ukraine built a network of drones, satellites, and reconnaissance teams that watched Russian movements 24/7. They created a system where no Russian artillery could move without being seen. And once you're seen, you're targeted. Once you're targeted, you're destroyed. Russia tried to adapt. They started moving artillery at night. They used different routes. They spread out their convoys. They increased air defense. None of it worked. Ukrainian drones had thermal cameras. They could see through darkness. Ukrainian intelligence mapped every possible route and pre-targeted all of them. When Russian convoys spread out, Ukraine just hit them in multiple locations simultaneously. Russia also tried to replace their losses. They pulled old Soviet-era artillery out of storage. They ramped up production at their factories, but they couldn't keep up. Ukraine was destroying artillery faster than Russia could build or restore it. By early 2025, experts estimated Russia's ability to restore tanks from storage had slowed by 75% compared to 2022. The same thing was happening with artillery. Russia was running out of equipment they could repair. The artillery pieces they did have were often in terrible condition. Old barrels that couldn't fire accurately, worn-out vehicles that broke down constantly. Russia was scraping the bottom of the barrel. For the soldiers on the ground, this was huge. Russian artillery had been the main killer of Ukrainian troops early in the war. But as Ukraine destroyed more and more Russian guns, the artillery fire slowed down. Russian units couldn't provide the same fire support. Russian attacks lost their main advantage. Ukrainian soldiers noticed the difference immediately. Where they used to face constant artillery barrages, now there were gaps, periods of quiet. Russian artillery was still dangerous, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. And when Russian infantry attacked without heavy artillery support, Ukrainian defenses tore them apart. The balance of the war was shifting. But this success came at a cost. Ukraine was burning through ammunition at an incredible rate. Every time they hit a Russian convoy, they used dozens of shells or rockets. Every drone strike required resources. And Russia kept bringing in more artillery, not as much as before, but they kept fighting. They pulled out older equipment. They got ammunition from North Korea and Iran. They adapted their tactics to hide their artillery better. This wasn't a knockout blow. This was a grinding war of attrition, and Ukraine was winning the artillery war, but slowly. The question became, could Ukraine keep up the pressure? Could they destroy Russian artillery faster than Russia could replace it? September 2025 through March 2025 proved they could. Month after month, Ukraine kept destroying Russian artillery at record rates. Every time Russia tried to mass their artillery for an offensive, Ukraine spotted it and struck. Every time Russia moved guns to a new position, drones tracked them. The cumulative effect was devastating. By late 2025, Russia had lost over 34,000 artillery systems since the start of the war. Their artillery brigades were shadows of their former strength. The massive firepower advantage Russia had in 2022 was gone. And the economic cost was staggering. Over $8 billion in destroyed artillery in 2025 alone. That's money Russia spent building or restoring weapons that ended up as scrap metal in Ukrainian fields. Ukraine's defense ministry pointed out that $8 billion could have built 13 modern sports arenas or 18 state-of-the-art hospitals. Instead, Russia spent it on artillery that got blown up. The story of September 22, 2025 wasn't about one lucky strike. It was about a systematic campaign to destroy Russia's artillery. A campaign built on intelligence, patience, and precision. Ukraine waited, they watched Russian artillery move, they tracked every convoy. And when the moment was right, when Russian guns were most vulnerable, they struck with everything they had. 81 artillery systems destroyed in one day. It was the climax of months of careful work, and it kept happening day after day, month after month. Russia came into this war thinking their artillery would crush Ukraine. Instead, their artillery became their biggest loss. Over $1.2 billion worth of guns and equipment destroyed in just the first 9 months of 2025. And the destruction continued into 2025. So what does this mean for the war? It means Russia can't rely on artillery dominance anymore. It means Ukrainian forces have more breathing room. It means Russia's offensive operations are harder to support. But this war isn't over. Russia still has artillery. They're still fighting. The question is whether Ukraine can maintain this level of destruction. Can they keep finding and hitting Russian artillery faster than Russia can replace it? The evidence says yes. Through most of 2025 and into 2025, Ukraine proved they could. They developed a system that works. Intelligence networks that spot Russian movements. Weapons that can strike deep behind enemy lines. Operators who know exactly when to attack. And most importantly, they learned something crucial about modern warfare. Artillery is only powerful when it can hide and when it can move safely. Take away either of those advantages and artillery becomes a target. Ukraine took away both. The lesson here goes beyond this war. This is what happens when an army builds a drone-centric intelligence system, when every movement is watched, when precision weapons can strike anywhere, anytime. Russia learned this lesson the hard way. They lost over $1.2 billion in artillery in just 9 months because they couldn't hide their movements. They couldn't protect their convoys. They couldn't adapt fast enough. And Ukraine proved that a smaller force with better intelligence and precision weapons can destroy the heavy firepower of a larger army. That's the real story of September 22, 2025 and the months that followed. Not just one big strike, but a complete transformation in how artillery warfare works. Russia's artillery fleet moved, Ukraine watched, and then Ukraine blew it all apart. What would you have done differently if you were planning Russian artillery movements? How would you protect convoys when drones are everywhere? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories about the technology and tactics changing modern warfare, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. The next video is already in production, and you won't want to miss it.